you're likely to feel the impact of international trade on a daily basis. Look at your phone, TV, or the computer you're watching this on. Was it entirely made in your country? Probably not. International trade influences our way of life, our jobs, our food. It lowers prices for consumers. It creates opportunities for European companies. Over 630,000 European businesses export outside the EU. We know trade brings benefits, but how do we make sure it won't harm us? We will talk to several members of the European Parliament who work on trade issues.
Trade is stimulating sustainable growth, that's for sure. And the experience shows it quite clearly here on the European side, but also, and that's really important, also for the trading partners.
Nuestras empresas necesitan crecer con la exportación porque de esa manera generan mayor riqueza, invierten más dinero y por tanto se crea mayor número de empleo.
We live in a rapidly changing world. The EU must reflect who and what we can rely on.
2008, 2009, after the world economic crisis, the United States and China moved away from this rule-based order. So our defense instruments have to be changed, and also our network with reliable partner was developed. So this was really a big change in trade policy. And of course, because of the conflicts, now trade is really in the middle of the storm. We see the trade policy of President Trump, totally unpredictable, sometimes using trade and investment as a political tool, a coercive instrument. On China, we see aggressive industrial policy with industrial goods like cars and others.
El mundo ha cambiado desde que la guerra de Ucrania pues, nos viene a condicionar el tema de una energía barata, desde que el tema de China nos viene a limitar determinados productos o sobre todo aquellos que son estratégicos y que son fundamentales y esenciales para seguir produciendo y seguir estando en vanguardia en tecnología, y también porque los Estados Unidos precisamente nos han limitado el acceso a su inteligencia artificial. Entonces hemos tenido que reaccionar y hemos tenido que reaccionar rápidamente. Entonces hemos perdido la inocencia. Por tanto, nosotros hemos tenido que inmediatamente tener que empezar a buscar nuevos socios comerciales para no depender de unos proveedores.
Let's look at the numbers. The European Union is actually the world's largest trading bloc. It acts on the global stage in a united way rather than having 27 national trade strategies. The power of the EU single market puts the EU in a better negotiating position compared to each country alone. In 2024, the EU represented an estimated 15.8% of world trade. This means that, together, the EU's 27 countries buy and sell more goods and services than any other country in the world. Exports to non-EU countries supported 33.5 million jobs in the EU in 2023. That's 15.4% of all EU employment. In other words, almost 1 in 6 jobs in the EU depends on trade. With this huge impact, no wonder that trade also raises concerns. Are European companies and workers protected from unfair competition? How do EU farmers benefit? And what about consumers? Trade agreements are an important way to tackle these questions while also improving relationships with partners and making them more predictable. And so, the EU has been working on several new trade agreements around the globe. The EU is shaping rules in specific areas or strategic importance. Recently, the Parliament adopted new laws that tackle steel markets.
The steel industry is crucial for the European competitiveness, for our sustainability, because the European steel industry has invested huge amount in the green transition. And we also want to secure the steel supply to the European defense industry. That's why we are doing this. So in the end of the day, this is about the strength of a united Europe.
Currently, the EU has over 40 different trade agreements with more than 70 countries on 6 continents. Some of them are broad, others are more specialized, focusing on intellectual property, investments, geographical indications, or other specific areas.
La gran ventaja política es que la Unión Europea puede hablar en nombre de todos, debe hablar en nombre de todos y debe condicionar las relaciones comerciales en nombre de los 27 países. La fuerza que te da tener un mercado de 440 millones de habitantes no es la que tiene un presidente de un gobierno de los 27 Estados miembros si quiere él negociar de manera independiente a lo que supone la Unión Europea.
Most trade agreements focus on tariffs, which are a tax on imports. But they aren't just about tariffs. They can protect companies, workers, and farmers. They ensure European companies can bid for government contracts in partnered countries. They make sure imported products meet the quality and safety standards we require in Europe. Trade agreements also promote the EU values in the world: democracy, human rights, dignity, and the rule of law.
Because trade has to be fair. So we want to have competition, but under fair conditions. So on the other side should be no illegal subsidies. We have to respect consumer protection standards.
In the end, trade deals are also about predictability.
We want to have stable relation. We want to have a rule-based system.
This is how a trade deal comes into place. Step 1. It begins with the European Commission asking the Council, which represents the EU countries, whether it can start negotiations with a trading partner. Step 2. If the Commission gets the green light, it negotiates on behalf of the whole EU. Step 3. The European Parliament needs to approve any deal before it can come into force. Why is this important?
Now the Parliament is responsible for the ratification of all trade deals and is also responsible for trade-related legislation.
Members voice their concerns to Council and Commission. They can also reject deals where these concerns are not tackled well. Step 4. Once Parliament gives its consent, Council can conclude the agreement. Step 5. For some trade agreements, all EU countries need to approve them. This goes, for example, for agreements in the fields of trade in services and in the commercial aspect of intellectual property, as well as foreign direct investment. Step 6. The trading partners need to ratify the agreement as well. Now that we understand the process, let's talk about the trade relationship between the EU and the US. It is arguably the most important commercial relationship in the world. The EU and the US exchange about 4.6 billion in goods and services every day, making it the largest bilateral trade relationship in the world. In 2025, total trade between the EU and the US hit 1.8 trillion euros. EU and US firms have 4.8 trillion worth of investment in each other's markets. But this relationship has been changing. In 2025, the US president announced new tariffs imposed on EU imports.
There was a pressure by Trump, no doubt about, with this unjustified tariffs in this so-called Liberation Day on the 2nd of April. I will call it Inflation Day because the products in the United States are increasing in price, and at the moment we have 4.2% inflation rate. And then the legal base was really taken away by the Supreme Court. So it is clear that this is illegal.
A few months after, EU and US reached an agreement on future relations.
There's a big difference between the United States and the European Union. In the United States, there's one man deciding. I have no clue why the Congress is accepting, but that's the situation in the United States. We are really here in the European Parliament the democratic force, and we have now really a legislation created which have a really good and really clear safety net. That's really an important part to protect us against unfair mechanism from the United States.
How does it feel now that your part in the EU-US deal is concluded?
That's not concluded. It's more or less the beginning, because now we have a legal framework, really good legislation, and we have to look for proper implementation. And sometimes it's more challenging than making the legislation.
New agreements with different countries are today more important than ever before.
Si queremos ser independientes, si queremos tener nuestras propias estrategias y garantizar el abastecimiento, tenemos que tener socios diversos, cuanto más mejor, para que nos puedan garantizar el suministro de las materias que necesitan nuestras empresas para continuar creciendo.
Recently, the EU concluded talks with India, the largest democracy and fourth largest economy in the world. This creates a market of 2 billion people. In June 2026, the EU signed a new digital trade agreement with South Korea. There are deals with Mexico, Indonesia, Australia, the South American bloc Mercosur, and more.
I've been witnessing more than ever the will between the European Union and Mexico to close ties with this modernization of the trade agreement. Politically now is the time to maintain this excellent work and that finally produces for the people jobs, also growth to our enterprises and to our economical network. I think that this kind of trade agreements is a very European way of showing that there are other ways to increase also the benefits for our enterprises, not by imposing tariffs, but creating further commerce, further trade agreements, opening our spaces, as long also as there is security and that there is a clear regulation and that we all play by the same rules.
Having more deals in place means one partner can't have too large of an impact on Europe. The same goes for European companies relying on exports outside the single market or on imports of certain goods and services, raw materials, or energy. Trade deals bring safeguards. Beyond this, the EU has developed different tools to make sure its interests are protected. One of them is the so-called anti-coercion instrument. It's a new tool the EU created to prevent trading partners from imposing unbalanced and unfair provisions. Here's how it works. If a country tries to blackmail or threaten the EU, do what we want or we block your trade, we can use the anti-coercion instrument to hit back. This includes a wide range of countermeasures, imposing tariffs and quotas, restriction on goods and services, limits on access to public programs, financial markets, or intellectual property rights. Another tool in review with the Council is the foreign investment screening. In May, Parliament adopted new rules to prevent hostile foreign governments or companies from buying up Europe's critical infrastructure.
When Chinese companies are buying our ports, our airports, our communication networks, they do it in order to have some kind of domination of Europe. And we have to protect our own security. So it's the end of naivety. And what we are creating is a harmonized framework in order to protect the citizens and the productions of Europe.
Trade is a big deal. The stakes are high and concerns are legitimate. Yet with proper scrutiny, trade benefits the countries involved, citizens and businesses. The EU and the Parliament work to make sure the interests of Europeans are protected. Make sure to subscribe and follow to keep up to date with news from the European Parliament.